Hello, welcome everyone. How is everyone doing? Who is ready? Who's ready for the news? Who is ready for the news? We have a lot to go over. I realized that, I was away for a weekend, which inherently causes me to be behind a bunch. So later on today, we'll find out if we need the GRE to stream. Yes, that will be news for after stream. I mean, we can do it on stream if you guys would like afterwards. It might not be on stream for very long, but more as a on stream until the stream crashes. Actually, because I use an external streaming device, like a 2-computer setup, the stream should continue on. In theory, it might just be black. So I had to aggressively cut things. It turns out that there was a ton of stuff that happened. We're going to have to fly through the security because there was a lot of security. And for all of you wanting to know, we are going to cover the recent things that happened at ChatGPT. There was actually quite a bit of drama. I'm going to cover, to the best of my ability, what I know and what I've seen. And I'll give you some of my thoughts from what I have read so far, because I think it's a little bit interesting. Is there a little lag? I feel like it's not smooth. Maybe it's not. It says my bitrate is good. OpenAI Chronicles Clippy's Revenge. I actually think that Microsoft is probably coming to, is it just my computer? Is the stream coming through okay for you all? Because mine is not coming through great. What I'm viewing it as. Okay, it seems fine. Then I will leave it. I will leave it. I think my computer is a little... There's quite a few tabs open. So that's probably doing it. So, all right. Well, we'll get into it. We have a lot to cover. We're going to start with security because there's a lot to cover. And then we're going to jump into the OpenAI stuff. And then we're going to talk, we don't have a ton of cloud. I didn't see a ton of cloud. We have a few cloud topics to talk about. But then we have a couple things with open source and whatnot. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into security. I felt like I had to talk about this one since I so often say good things. I like to always bring up the bad things, but it turns out that if you follow Anonymous Dan, you'll have seen this with Cloudflare going down. Now, they were also at this same time responsible for several other attacks that hit Outlook as well as ChatGPT. Although we're not going to talk about those two because there's other stuff to be going on. One of the cool follow-ups that Cloudflare did go into is that I meant for this to be the Cloudflare's response. I don't have Cloudflare response open for some reason, but one of the cool things that they did was that Cloudflare.com isn't hosted in any way where it can impact their core services. So you can take Cloudflare.com down as much as you want, and it doesn't actually even inhibit your ability to log into your services or anything like that. So so yeah, this wasn't a big deal. And it's also been fixed as well. So that's out there. But yeah, Anonymous Sedan did quite a bit with that. Probably on the bigger news that doesn't affect you probably at this point is Reaper, or Reaptar. Reptar? We'll call it Reptar. Reptar. I don't know why I was reading it as Reaper this entire time, but Reptar. It's Reptar. Anyways, Reptar was another, another CPU vulnerability akin to Heartbleed or what's the other one called? The one that was hit the Zenbleed. It wasn't Zenbleed. It was Zen something or other. Anyways, it's akin to those. It affected Intel specific ones. Now, this has only been released to general public recently. They did work behind the scenes with Intel to fix it. So either your motherboard or your CPU should be patched by now. And if it doesn't, you should check to see if there's any patches released. Now, one thing I am going to Spectre, thank you. Spectre Meltdown, yes. I'm going to send you guys this link. So this is the link to the actual basically, this is basically like, oh, how good are we? That's what this is. Google's, yeah. Anyways, but this is actually the security researcher at Google who found it, talks about how they found it and what caused it. So if really high at a high level, what caused it was basically how you address registers. And when they went from 8 to 16 registers, this is what caused the problem. And how they found it is actually pretty cool. They basically, to discover it, they have these things that run on these CPUs that basically should produce the same thing. And they're just checking that if I do the same inputs, I get the same outputs. And effectively, one of those came back as I didn't get the same outputs, and is what caused them to start digging into it. And then they go into digging into it and whatnot and whatnot. So anyways, you should read it. It was a pretty cool write-up as far as what it goes with. So. Also in security, EPF Kubernetes security tool Tetragon improves performance and stability. So they released the 1.0 of Tetragon. I know that we've lightly talked about that in the last stream, but I hadn't really talked about it a whole bunch. But Tetragon 1.0 is out. It's basically security and observability and runtime enforcement with eBPF. So we've heard a lot about eBPF. We haven't seen a ton of tools that leverage eBPF to its fullest. This would be one of them. I haven't had a ton of experience with it. Maybe that's something we should try. Another one out there is Kubescape, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later as it released 3.0, and it also leverages eBPF for doing the things that it does. So this is pretty cool. And if you're running in Kubernetes and you're looking to be more secure, I think you should give this a check. I think you should give it a check. All right. Article 45 will roll back web security for 12 years. Now, if you followed my Friday morning early stream, you know that the EU has been trying to do things with security-related things. And the EU is posting another maybe questionable security-related law, Article 45. Now, what Article 45, to my this is not law advice in any ways, in my uneducated eyes, is basically it's going to make web browsers accept CAs from government agencies in the EU. And the issue with this is that a lot of those CAs are outdated and are poorly done, and that's why they aren't actually accepted on these web browsers. And so a lot of people in the security community are pretty upset about this. Now, this was to go into the same thing. This Article 42 was in the same batch that was supposed to get the CRA, the cybersecurity thing through I want to say Parliament. It's not Parliament. I forget the name, but in Brussels. But it also didn't get signed into law that I noticed, but it didn't get removed either. So I'm wondering if there's some stuff. I haven't seen an update on this. Maybe I just wasn't able to find it and it did. But so we'll be watching this moving forward as well. Sumo Logic urges customers to reset API keys following a security breach. So if you use Sumo Logic, I don't, but if you do, they had a security breach and you need to rotate your keys or reset them and rotate them wherever they are. Boeing data published by Lotbit Hacking Gang. So there you go. ChatGPT's new code interpreter has a giant security hole. Now, this isn't the big. You'd think this was the big. This would be the thing to be talking about, but it's not. ChatGPT has its own section, and we'll be getting to it in just a second. This is actually a really interesting hack, and I think it's worth knowing about. So basically, ChatGPT has this sandbox where you can open your own. You can open your own. Python scripts and code with them there, and ChatGPT can actually run that Python there in that sandbox. But it's the same sandbox that allows you to use your open CVE files and work on that type of data as well. So basically, ChatGPT is giving you a sandbox computer where ChatGPT can actually do stuff. Now, I don't pay for ChatGPT, so I can't actually tell you, I can't actually do this because I don't have that feature. But effectively, what happens is that basically anything in that sandbox can be stolen very easily because effectively ChatGPT executes any Python that's in there. And if you paste a link in there that goes to some Python, it actually runs that Python. So it's actually pretty easy to steal data from that. So I think it's really important that you're aware of that. If you're leveraging that and you have sensitive data in that, you have to be very careful about the code that you run in ChatGPT or have it help you run because it itself could steal your data. Did that make sense? Hopefully. I know I'm going a little bit quickly because we just have so much to go over, but that was the highlight of this. You can finally 3D print a 767. Now thanks that leak. I think that is definitely something that could be done with that leak, but I think it has more to do with like company secrets that are now public domain. But the accurate 3D printing of a 767 is now at your fingertips. The Tetra radio encryption algorithms are set to enter the public domain. This is actually a pretty cool thing that has happened in the, Europe and UK. So the Tetra radio encryption algorithm is basically a algorithm used to encrypt emergency radio broadcasts across Europe and the UK. And I believe there's some other countries that accept the Tetra radio encryption. I don't know them off the top of my head. But those are the main ones, Europe and the UK and a few others. And I'm not meaning to insult you guys. I don't know everybody that uses the Tetra, and I didn't look them all up. But that being said, there was like 5 security vulnerabilities that basically made it where anybody could hack these systems were discovered. And upon that, it has been voted that the Tetra radio encryption algorithms are going to hit the public domain so that basically external researchers can actually look into them and hopefully find these security vulnerabilities. Yeah, these are the disclosed 5 vulnerabilities. Anyways, the goal is that outside sources can actually review and make these better. So again, this is kind of the obscurity isn't necessarily security. It can be part of your security, but that shouldn't be your only security. And they're taking the stance that we're going to basically put them in the public domain and get security from a broader audience. That's the stance they're taking there. So this was an interesting attack on SSH keys. I know a lot of us in software use SSH keys all the time. This is way too large. There we go. So basically, this was an attack done on an SSH server. And basically in which they use the key to impersonate the server and respond to incoming SSH traffic from clients, and recover the client's login credentials. So basically it's a man in the middle attack in essence, a sophisticated one. So, but they were able to then steal the cryptographic keys protecting those connections. So it makes it a little bit worse. They basically chained a couple different things. I don't fully understand all of this. I was actually reading in all the other ones. So yeah, but it was an interesting thing. I'm gonna give you guys this link so you guys can access it if you like, read more on it. Be careful. This one, if you ever thought that ransomware groups wouldn't use the law against you, well, you have another thing coming. And you know what? If the CRA in Europe, if the CRA becomes law, which again, it kind of was supposed to, but it wasn't actually announced as becoming law during that. I'm going to call it a tribunal. I don't know what it's called. In Europe there. I bet you'll see more of this. So basically, the ransomware group files an SEC complaint over the victim's failure to disclose their data breach. So basically, the ransomware group didn't get the ransomware that they demanded. And so instead of just moving on, they decided to make sure that this company paid them. Even if it wasn't paying them, the company was going to have to pay because they didn't disclose their breach to the SEC, which they're supposed to within a certain amount of time. I don't remember exactly how much time. I think you have a couple of days for severe. I forget the exact rules, but you get a couple of days for anything that you have to announce to the SEC. It's not a public announcement, but you have to actually file a claim with them if you have something that could affect shareholders. And then you have some rules on how quickly you have to tell shareholders as well. I don't know all of the laws around it, but basically, yes, your criminals will use the law against you if they can. Absolutely. All right. Who's ready to talk about ChatGPT? Now, this is not AI. We actually have an AI section that we'll get to after the ChatGPT section. Then we have a Linux section. Then we have an open source section, a general section, and a cloud section. Cloud section is going to be last for all of you. But who's ready to talk about ChatGPT? So, ChatGPT had a lot of news going on. Now, if you thought that was ChatGPT going offline for 90 minutes in a major OpenAI outage. Again, this was related to the people who took down the anonymous Sudan. They took down quite a few things. Again, Cloudflare was one. ChatGPT was another. Something Microsoft, I think it was Outlook, was another. But this is not the news of the week. If you thought that it was Sam Altman says that ChatGPT is not the way to a superintelligence. And when they refer to superintelligence, let me be clear, because this is not clear to people. But when Sam Altman talks about a superintelligence, it means a computer that can actually learn and think like a human. Okay. I would actually designate that as a little bit different than a superintelligence, but that's what they're trying to get at. Something that can learn on its own without human input and be creative and whatnot. So I would argue a little bit with him, but that's what this means. So OpenAI says that ChatGPT is not the way to super intelligence. And actually, very interestingly, something we will talk about in the AI section was Google's DeepMind actually released this. Pre-training data mixtures enable narrow model selection capabilities in transformer models. If you don't know everything that's said there, basically GPT, if you're wanting to know what GPT stands for, the T is for transformer, the P is for pre-trained, and the G is for generative. So it's generative pre-trained transformers. That's the technology. People don't really realize it, but GPT is the technology. Generative pre-trained transformers. Okay, so this is a research paper that was recently released by DeepMind on these transformer models. And basically, I'm going to paraphrase, and I have read the whole thing at least once and skimmed over some sections, and I'm not going to say that I'm smart enough to fully understand, but I can read the abstract and things like that. And basically says that generative transformer models have limits, hard limits, that actually are around the data that they were trained on. Basically, transformer models have no way to break out of what they were trained on, period. There's no way for them to think. There's no way for them. And they go on to mathematically prove that. Now, this is currently under review from other scientists. So, maybe it's not golden, but it was released by DeepMind, and they don't have a tendency of releasing garbage because, they don't have a tendency. So anyways, this was released by them. All right. Anyways, I say all of that to say this is not the news of the week. This right here. Not the news for ChatGPT. So what could it be? Could it be that Greg Brockman, Brockman happens to be the chairman of, or was the chairman of the board, and basically he's not the chief scientist. What was he? Maybe he's the chief scientist. Anyways, this wasn't it. This wasn't it, even though this is major. This was actually because of what happened. Do we know who Ilya? I don't even know how to pronounce his name, so I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. What this has to do with it. We're going to get into it. How many fingers are in that all hands? OpenAI fires their CEO, Sam Altman, after losing confidence in his leadership. Okay, now there is a lot to dissect here because there has been literally since Friday, there has been a firestorm of information. And I'm only going to tell you what I know so far, and I'll give you my general thoughts on it from the things. I'm not going to cover every piece of literature I've read on this because I have read more than I care to show on screen. I do try to show at least a decent amount and give you guys links to that. But yeah. So we're not going to go, we're not going to cover everything. I will happily share this Forbes article, but this was major because if you guys remember at the beginning of this, not at the beginning, but previously, we talked about Greg Brockman. So both Sam Altman and Greg Brockman sat on the board. So there was only a few other people that were on the board of OpenAI. And there was only one other person on the board that was actually working inside of OpenAI. The other ones were independent outside sources. So this was a huge, major shakeup. And the interesting thing is, I initially jumped to this was a play from Microsoft. I initially jumped to Microsoft push for this. Microsoft owns 49%, but if you read their terms, which I did, Microsoft got no stake in the company. They didn't get a board member. They didn't get anything. So there's no Microsoft board member on OpenAI. Nothing. They just got a 49% stake. 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 49% Altman's control has been deleted. So that was a little quizzical to me, because my initial thought was that Microsoft itself wanted to take over OpenAI. But that doesn't seem to be the case, because Microsoft itself has actually come out and said that, that they've really pushed for Altman to be rehired as the CEO. Now, I don't think Altman will come back. I don't think the board has reached out, or at least from the leaks that I have seen. Again, I cannot verify any of this. It does appear that maybe they are trying to get Altman to come back, but I don't think Altman's going to come back. But it appears that Microsoft is pushing them hard to rehire Altman. So what could cause this? And why? I don't know why I opened this page. That's not the page I meant to open at all. Why did I bring up this guy, Ilya? I'm going to call him Ilya, and hopefully that doesn't upset him. I think Ilya and Altman were in disagreement. I think, why do you think I brought up this? Says that ChatGPT is not the way to superintelligence. And I think this stems from Ilya very much is scared of, I'm not going to say scared, and I'm not even going to say, like, this is not me picking on Ilya. Let me be clear. But Ilya is very much afraid of the consequences of this superintelligence, if we could ever create something like that. And I think that he very much was in opposition to this statement. So I actually feel like there was quite a bit. And I think that he did a fantastic job of getting the board to turn on him. Now, it turns out that the shareholders, or the people that own the shares of OpenAI, might be turning on the board, because if you thought that the CEO didn't report to anybody, it turns out they report to the board. If you didn't think the board reported to anybody, it turns out they report to the shareholders, which, I mean, I guess Microsoft is a 59 or 49% shareholder, but there's also other shareholders that are also up in arms. But I think that, and again, this is just from the things I have read, Ilya is possibly behind this coup. I don't know. I'm going to go with the board using ChatGPT to write their emails and just hallucinated and fired Sam. Maybe. I think that this is a huge shakeup. I mean, I have not seen a CEO get fired, shadow fired before. I think that if there's ways of doing things wrong, OpenAI possibly didn't consult ChatGPT. I think possibly they didn't ask ChatGPT the best way to do it. So if they had asked ChatGPT how to fire a CEO, they would have gotten a lot of stuff. Firing a CEO is a serious and complex decision that should be approached with careful consideration and adherence to legal and ethical standards. Here are some general steps you might consider. Now, I'm not saying you take ChatGPT, but it might have worked better for you. Especially blindsiding a group like Microsoft is maybe not the best move. It doesn't instill confidence from me as a user. It doesn't instill confidence from Microsoft. It doesn't instill confidence from all of these people. As a board, you need to have the confidence of your shareholders and even your users, because, yeah, we look at CEOs a lot, but a lot of the times the boards are the people driving those CEOs to do the things that they do. They report to their boards. So, anyways, next time ChatGPT wants to do something, they should consult their own AI. Yeah. So that was what happened. Now, I'm going to be interested in seeing if Altman comes back. I, again, highly doubt that he'll come back. I think for him to come back, I think the rest of the board has to step down. I don't think that your board can pull a stunt like that and then come back and say nothing's happened. Stunts like that are burning bridges. And, you know, that's a rough one. The other interesting thing is the reason they said that they let Altman go. Microsoft can fund him for his next venture for way less, or even get him back to work for them. Absolutely. Absolutely. This is the problem when you lose really pivotal people, is what I'm going to call them. They're very pivotal. And burn bridges, burn goodwill. You burn a lot. It's a lot more than just their monthly salary. So, yeah. All right. We have some other, but yeah, I am interested in seeing how this unfolds. Will they get him back? I doubt it, but we'll see. What will they do next? Because I am assuming Altman and Brockman are going to do something else in the future. So we'll see what they do. We will see. All right, we have some other AI news. Is he pivotal, or is he just a good talking head? So, Russell, I go back and forth on this. Are really good talking heads not pivotal? I don't know. If you can get a person to sway an entire population, are they not pivotal? Are they don't necessarily bring anything special, except for the ability to get a bunch of people. Do I think that Sam Altman is one of the more brilliant people there? No, I think Brockman and Ilya are definitely like some of the much more brilliant people there, especially Brockman. Brockman is seriously brilliant. I'm not, Altman is definitely more brilliant than I am. That's not hard to do. But, so that this is not me downplaying them, but I am saying like being that figurehead can be pivotal, I think. I go back and forth on it though. I'm with you. I go back and forth on it. All right, so we have other AI news to cover. Some of this is really interesting. So we're going to be covering something about Amazon Bedrock, a very interesting article that I found that I think people should be aware of. And then some a little bit less interesting stuff after that. So let's jump into it. Let's jump into it with what I think is the most pivotal first, and then we'll cover the other things. Pre-training data mixtures enables narrow model selection capabilities in transformer models. Now, I alluded to this with the OpenAI stuff. It kind of backs up Altman's statement of that ChatGPT or these generative pre-trained transformer models aren't necessarily, the way to a super intelligence as it might be. And I think if you're interested in this stuff, you should definitely read the paper for sure. As it gives a lot of information. It's a fairly good paper, and I really liked it. So this comes from Google's DeepMind, and it just talks about the abilities of pre-trained models to do things they weren't trained on, or these pre-trained transformer models or generative transformer. This is actually specifically looking at transformer models. And not other types of machine learning. Again, that gets a little bit deeper into the different types. But this is basically what ChatGPT or your Dollies with their photo generation and things like that. They're all built on these GPTs, these pre-trained transformers. So it's basically looking at mathematically what those can do, and can they really break out of what they were trained on. And at first, we thought that they could. We saw evidence that maybe they could do stuff that they weren't necessarily directly trained on, but it seems like it's not really true. And this kind of mathematically helps to solidify that. So it was really good. This, I think, is very important for anybody that runs on Amazon and wants to use Bedrock. It was an article titled Amazon Bedrock, How Good, Bad is Titan Embeddings. So if you're looking to use their Titan embeddings in Bedrock, I suggest you give this a check. So their Titan embeddings, this works to compare it to basically any other embedding models out there that are out there. And this includes open source ones from Hugging Face, as well as OpenAI ones through Azure. And you can see like a really quick, just a really quick at the top of this. It's not great. The Hugging Face ones beat them, plus are cheaper. So they're not just better, but they're much better than the Titan embeddings. So now we can get into embedding dimensions, because this actually allows larger embedding dimensions where this doesn't, which that can change some variances. So if you need that larger embedding dimension, then that's fine to state that you need something. But even then, Azure through OpenAI with their ADA embeddings does a better job at almost a 70% instead of the 66. So if even if you want to take that with only 1024 on this one, if you do need that larger embedding dimension, there is, OpenAI is still better by a good margin too. Now, the rest of this article just goes into their philosophy on how they did it, how they tested it, and why they tested it in the way that they did, with some actual other complaints. So this was limited in some extents, and it was limited because there was no bulk upload for Amazon Bedrock. So they could only do one at a time, which limited the amount of things that could be tested in Amazon Bedrock, because there was only a one at a time workflow, not a bulk upload. So that also made it, there was only 3 key metrics that he looked over instead of thousands because of that. So anyways, I'd give it a look especially if you're trying to do something with embeddings. This is definitely something that you might want to look over with Azure, or with Amazon if you're wanting to use Amazon Bedrock and just understanding its capabilities. Now, as a follow-up to that, the H200s have been released. I have asked them for a review model, if I could have a review model. I don't think I'm going to get a response, and I'm not sure that I'm going to get a review model, but, it was worth a shot. I literally email him every single time they come out with a GPU. I'll make a video for free about your H200. I do believe these start around $50,000 if you were going to go buy one of these. So maybe it's not the one for you, but it has 141 gigabytes of HBF or HBM3E memory, and almost 5 terabytes per second. It's a workhorse. I want one. I probably couldn't even afford the electricity for this thing, but it looks cool. It looks like bars of gold. Bars of gold would be cheaper though. So Microsoft GitHub announces Copilot Assistant that can learn about companies' private code. So previously, Copilot could only learn about the open source code projects, and Copilot has now released one that allows it to work on your private code bases. So if that's you, if you've been wanting that, go for it. Now, I have to say, what does this plug into? It has all these buses here. So I'm assuming that it plugs into PCIe, but like maybe a couple of them. That would be my assumption. Like, is this each like 1, 2, 3, 4 PCI buses? I don't know. I don't know. Is SXM a thing? It says a form factor. I don't know what that form factor is. It might not fit in my computers. I'd find a way. I'd find a way if they sent me one. It is PCI. I'm guessing that like you have PCI cables. Obviously, this doesn't like sit in the PCI. I don't think so. I'm guessing it doesn't. But I'm guessing these like plug into it. But I'm just guessing. I have not ever dealt with something in the SXM form factor. Oh, PCI Gen 5. You're right. It uses 700 watts. It's actually not terrible. I mean, like, it's more than my computer. No, my computer hits more than 700 watts. For the CPU and GPU, it can peak out above that. I have an AMD CPU. So, honestly, 700 watts is not... I thought it was going to be worse than that. I have a 4070. That's what, 200 watts max? I think it's 200 watts. 700 just doesn't, for what it was pushing, does not feel terrible to me as a max power draw. I don't know what we can find out after the news. I don't know what the max watt of, but like, yeah, 700 did not surprise me, or it did surprise me because that seems pretty efficient for what you're getting. 700 watts is still a lot, but yeah. All right. Oh, that being said, another thing that I did notice, I don't have a page for it, but I do believe not Copilot, but Code Whisper. I missed this like a month ago. Copilot actually, Code Whisper also now has the ability to train on your private code. What I was going to say that I got sidetracked from is that this is a double-edged sword. And I learned this when we tried to do our AI games. If you guys remember, when we tried our AI games, if we did something one way, it would try to do it the same way every other time, even if it was wrong. It kind of shot us in the foot, and we had to like clear our settings and open a new window because it kept confusing languages and confusing. So if you like went and typed some JavaScript and asked it one question, then went over to C# and asked it the same question, it would start doing it in JavaScript. Or if it did it wrong one way, one area, and you let it save it that way, and so that area is wrong, it's going to redo it wrong in another area. So this is kind of a double-edged sword. If your code is right and perfect, it's going to copy and paste your code. So it's also going to copy and paste your mistakes too. Like I said, it's a double-edged sword. It's pretty nice. Now, in our AI games, we were wanting the AIs to... We wanted it to be a fair chance. And basically what was happening is AIs that were performing bad were tainting the AIs that were performing well. So basically, a bad AI would spit out a love sonnet, and then that would actually taint the good AI because they'd be like, oh, I see here you asked a similar question and this is how you answered and that's how you want me to do it. Literally, sometimes it was like basically copy and pasting because the AI assumes that if that's how I solved it, that's how I'd want it to solve it again. So yeah, anyways, I just wanted to let you guys know from my own experience, while I think this could be powerful and really awesome, it can also be a double-edged sword. You have to make sure that the code you're using is actually good code. And the last thing here for AIs is that Meta is furthering its partnership with Hugging Face and Scaleway to support open source. You guys can read more about it if you like. I do kind of like the path Facebook has taken to kind of their AI journey. I'm not going to say that they're perfect or without blame, or I don't like Facebook in general. I don't think it's healthy for our children, but that's a different conversation. My general thing is how they're going about working with open source and whatnot with AI seems to be a pretty cool thing. And they're having this AI startup program that, you know, they're powering through Hugging Face and Scaleway. So I think that this is pretty cool. Yeah. Russell and Raj, we do have a startup idea. Is this what you two are going to work on for the cursed software hackathon? You know, don't tell me if it is. You're going to get an AI. That's right. I'll release more about that on the news. But this December, the end of December, we're having a cursed software hackathon. So you know, bring your best, worst practices to the table to do our cursed software. Oh, we're doing the ethical dog hacking first. Okay, or the ethical dog hacking, ethical dog fighting. No gene splicing here. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what has happened in Linux. There's been one cool thing. The next long-term support Linux is out. John, I'm assuming that's an alias. It's good to see you. Welcome. We're doing the news today, right now. Every Sunday, we just cover the news that has happened in the last week, and we have some Linux news. Also, no, Boston Dynamic has not offered me a dog. I have offered them many videos in exchange for one of their dogs. I did not mention the ethical dog fighting. Didn't mention that part. I said I would do videos about software engineering, educational videos with their dog. Haven't responded to that. I can't afford a $70,000 car, let alone a $70,000 dog. Only half an alias? Well, that's good. That's good. All right, let's talk about what's happened in Linux. So there was basically two big things, actually just one big thing, one interesting article that I found that I wanted to share with you guys, and then something from Ubuntu that's maybe will be impactful in the future. Heavy Metal Linux 6.6 has arrived, and not only has it arrived, but if you take the time to come over to the Linux kernel.org, you can find that 6.6 has been added to the long-term kernel release. Now, something I found interesting with this, previously, like 2 months ago, I talked about how they were talking about making long-term kernel releases shorter, just to 2 years, due to the developer strain. Now, you will notice that it's 2023, and this is 2026. So, you know, you might be seeing the impact there. This is a little bit longer than 2 years. A little bit longer than 2 years. So anyways, that is your new LTS. You guys are ruining everything, okay? Why do you come see the news if you're more caught up on the news? So one, we have the new Chronicle reveals more detail about UW core desktop. And two, we have the Linux schedule is accidentally hardcore today. You guys know the news. You guys know the news. But that's okay. We're still going to cover it. Anyways. You guys have got it. You guys have got it going on. That's absolutely what we're going to cover, and it's going to be amazing. I also love you guys, so I'm not upset. DypoX, how are you? Well, I'm not sure. My opinion on these is very good, but we have the long term. Now, I would say if you guys know Greg and Sasha, these guys need a big shout out. And I'm going to give it to them right now. These are maintainers. This is not the fun job right here. And these people need a shout out. So I'm going to shout out them on X, and that's the only social media platform I have other than this. So I'm giving them a shout out right now. This is a little love job that somebody has to do, and I'm not smart enough to do it. And so big shout out to them. That's fantastic that they're sitting there and maintaining these. Yes, that is fantastic. All right, Canonical reveals more details about the Ubuntu Core desktop. Now, I'm going to reserve my thoughts about this for a little bit of time. Now, they're not changing their current offering, just to be clear. Nothing about the Ubuntu. This is not the. Here we go. This is the better one. This is not going to replace their current offerings. But if you know of the Nix that is coming out and things like that with these immutable images and repeatable builds and things like that, Nix is maybe not the best example here. Russell, I love your idea. I'm going to see if I can't get them on to just talk about horror stories, like horror stories with Merrick. Actually, that's a new segment. I will do it with anybody that has horror stories that they can and are willing to share. That's not throwing blame on anybody but themselves. It has to be your horror stories. This is not a tell about your other friend's dirty laundry. Absolutely. I would love to do that. But these guys, yeah. Anyways, so Ubuntu Core, what is it? Why does it matter? Ubuntu Core, from my understanding, is designed to basically give you I'm going to say reliable, but that's not the right choice for it. It's designed to give you a repeatable desktop, not desktop, but OS. I don't think it has to have the desktop. And basically give you a repeatable OS, I guess is kind of like Nix. So again, kind of like Nix, not exactly Nix though. So that's what it's trying to do, and they're trying to make it really small for like IoT. So in my opinion, it has the possibilities to either at least it has the ability to be maybe the next step towards a really good. Now you'll remember a couple months ago I talked about them making Ubuntu a real-time, or at least being able to be a real-time OS, which pushed its IoT offering. And as we see IoT exploding, and as we actually have a thing in a little bit about an IoT device that you'll have to be replacing, it's a really big deal to have a stable OS that's reproducible, that you can have a fleet of. Because if we know anything, maintaining a fleet of devices is difficult. We still struggle maintaining servers, and you can have a much larger fleet of IoT devices. And so Ubuntu Core is looking at making that easier. Now, again, I'm holding back more commentary on this because it's pretty early, but I think that's a good thing to strive towards. I think it's a good thing to strive towards. Now, is this the solution or not? That's where I'm going to hold back my judgment. I'm not sure. I don't know. But it is a good thing to strive towards. And that's what it's striving towards. It's coming out. It's going to have 10 years long-term support, which is another important thing for those IoT things. Sometimes those IoT things aren't easy to update. They're way out in the field, maybe don't have a good internet access or any internet access at all. And so like that's what they're doing. That's it. Simplified in a box. As no one ever updates them. Russell, maybe. Oh, maybe. Now, sometimes as software engineers, we wake up in the morning and we ask ourselves, how did this ever work? And that's what some Linux kernel engineers woke up one morning and said, how did this ever work? And that's what has happened for the last 15 years. And now how it has worked, I'm going to get into it because I actually dug into this because I thought at first there was a bigger story than there actually is. There actually isn't a huge story. But the Linux kernel scheduler has accidentally been hard-coded to a maximum of 8 cores for the past 15 years, and nobody noticed. Now, a lot of people that piped up and downvoted this, so it only has 3 stars, are people that opened up HTOP and said, my goodness, I'm using more than 8 cores. And the fact is, I am using more than 8 cores. That's a fact. Now, the thing is, Reactor 7 Raspberry Pi. Okay, so I'm using more than 8 cores. So a lot of people jumped on this and said, hey, my Linux uses more than 8 cores. Cloud servers have used more than 8 cores forever. If you think about it, Linux runs the internet for the most part. I know Microsoft would like to beg to differ, but Linux runs the internet. So this has to be wrong. And the fact is, the truth can be both. What happens is that the scheduler can schedule workloads on a lot of cores. All the cores. That's not what this is saying. What this is saying is that how the scheduler schedules changes based off of how many cores that it has. So if you have a 1-core CPU, it schedules different than if you have a 2-core CPU. And it was hard-coded to 8. So this isn't going to all of a sudden unlock 8 of your 16 cores that you haven't been using. That's just not true. But what it will do is it will improve the efficiency at which the scheduler can schedule stuff because it now understands larger core pools better. So it just wasn't as efficient as it could be. This is maybe not as big of a news as this makes it sound. I mean, maybe part of this is that people didn't actually read the article, but the article is pretty good. Raj, you will not be the one laughing when that Raspberry Pi. And that's why we can't get Raspberry Pis. The nuclear reactors are all scooping them up. So, again, that's what was found here. No, it doesn't mean that you've only been using 8 cores of your CPU. That's just not the case. What it meant was that the scheduler was hard-coded to actually look or change its logic based up to 8 cores. So yeah, that's kind of an overview of it. It's a good article, and it's also a really good find. The Ubuntu micro cloud. I did not. Good thing that you brought this up. Let me pull it up. I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, this is their edge thing. Oh, I purposely didn't talk about this. I hate to come across super negative on a topic. And like I don't have anything against um I don't have anything against Ubuntu. I think they've done a lot of good stuff. I think edge computing. So we can talk about this. I think that edge computing is a little overhyped in a lot of cases. It's one of those tools that is amazing when you have the problem. But I think it's also a tool that a lot of the times causes problems people don't understand. It's kind of like, oh, we adopted Kubernetes. Why? Because we did microservices. Well, why did you do microservices? Well, because that's the thing to do. And I find that this is true of the edge as well. Why did you adopt the edge? Well, because it's the thing to do. And because, you know, they'll tell you like, oh, well, it resolves edge latencies for the users because they get a response back from the server right away. And that sounds really great. But then you realize that that edge server has to make a call to a database that's back in the server anyways. And actually, you've only ever slowed your service down. So actually, in many ways, if you don't do the edge right, you can actually slow the response down. Yeah. And like I said, like we have a problem where we're still bad at managing our servers in a data center. Now spread them all around. Like figure out your data center first, then you can work on your edge. I mean, again, like this isn't me trying to be really pessimistic, and there's definitely real solutions that have been solved with edge things for a long time that are really good and useful. I guess it's for me, you just really need to know why you're wanting to adopt the edge. You only need to call the DB as if you are storing data, throw it away, and everything goes faster. Yeah, effectively, that's right. Dataless is the easiest and fastest. That's the new paradigm, dataless. So it is LXD being marketed in a different way. I'm going to make a dataless shirt for Christmas. I think that's one of the shirts. Oops. I just leaked that I have some stuff coming out. Dataless, though, is pretty good. I like that. We're going to make something out of that. All right. Anyways. John with the jokes. Never met a computer fast enough to outrun me. You have not met, what is it? The F-16? John? You have not met the F-16. It runs Kubernetes. That thing outruns you. Dataless edge browser apps, i.e. local storage, i.e. just your regular application. Kelly had no code Veracast. Dataless. All right, you guys are getting out of control. Oh, our dataless revolution is upon us. You guys just aren't prepared for the dataless revolution. You know what? It even works. The beauty of this solution, it even works without internet access. You don't need internet access for your dataless solution. It's amazing. You can take it anywhere and it just works. It has a few, we'll call them a few requirements, maybe shortcomings, but that's okay. If you don't hit those, if you don't need those things, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Welcome back to the 90s. All right. Let's finish off this this news segment. We have some open source stuff coming out. I think I hit everything that we had talked about. I need to make a video on edge computing. I do think it's something like Kubernetes where people can get themselves in trouble because it sounds like a good idea, and then it just has a bunch of things that people don't necessarily think about. And and yeah. So also, for you all that are actually care, the dataless is much more secure. When you don't have any way of communicating, it's much harder to hack remotely. In fact, it's very difficult to hack remotely. I'm not going to say impossible. But very difficult to hack remotely. But yeah, so sorry, that's my take on the microclouds. I think I forgot that that's what they called it. And again, I wasn't trying to be pessimistic on it. I don't like the idea as a whole for the most part. Not saying that their solution isn't a good solution for it. I don't know. I just think it's something that you should tread carefully with if you're going to do it. All right. You can't leak PII when there is no I. All right. We're getting back to the news. This smart garage door controller is no longer very smart. I can attest to this. It sucks. MyQ Smart Garage Door Opener Controller Tech has announced a shutoff of all unauthorized access to its APIs, basically meaning that if you use Home Assistant, you can't use it anymore. And this stinks. Now, I'm dearly hoping that they make a way for Home Assistant to talk to it. I hope that that's the case, because otherwise we're going to have to create a piece of hardware to do what the Chamberlain did. Now, I don't think that it has to do a whole lot. It's actually fairly simple and straightforward. So maybe we can make our own Home Assistant. I think there's some other projects out there already, but it kind of stinks because this kind of just worked and it doesn't anymore. Red Hat is releasing their developer hub. Now, if you guys don't know what their developer hub is based off of, if you know what Backstage is, Backstage was released last year from music people, right? Spotify. Spotify released their Backstage, which is their, can you post that garage door link? Yes, I can. Absolutely. If there's a link that you guys want that I don't post, I don't post all of them, but if there is a link that you do want that I don't post, please let me know, and I'm happy to post it. So Backstage is basically an internal developer platform. It basically allows you to discover and view APIs other people's teams have done. It tries to solve generically some of the problems that you get when you adopt microservices at its core. I think it's actually a pretty cool product, although I think that you have to be pretty far down the rabbit hole before it even makes sense to ever leverage. So that being said, Red Hat is basically doing what they did with Kubernetes. So if you guys know OpenShift is kind of Kubernetes, but it's kind of not Kubernetes at the same time. It's a heavy wrapper around it. They're doing the same thing with Backstage. So Backstage is becoming developer hub, and they're heavily wrapping it in their own twist. So I'm interested in seeing how. I'm actually hoping that they make it a little bit easier than Backstage. But what I think that would be the really cool thing that you're going to be able to do from this is basically be right in their Kubernetes offering in their Kubernetes offering. So in OpenShift, if you could automatically deploy Backstage and Backstage be that IDP inside of your Kubernetes cluster, I think it could actually really bridge that gap really quickly and easily, so that you could possibly use it from the start without being a super big one, because they control all of that. And I also know Red Hat has been doing a lot of plugins for it, so there's actually quite a bit that that goes into this. So they have a lot of Red Hat plugins for Backstage. So I think that like this could actually be really cool in making. Now, I think it hard sells you into the Red Hat ecosystem. So if you wanted my pessimistic view on it, I would be careful, because I think even OpenShift suffers from this. Like if you use OpenShift, while technically it's Kubernetes, it feels very hard to get off of, because they offer all of these things around it to control Kubernetes that aren't Kubernetes. So I would be worried about that. The Linux Foundation has announced an intent to form the High Performance Software Foundation. I think this is really cool. I think this is needed. I think this is awesome. I'm very excited about this. The Linux Foundation, nonprofit organization enabling mass innovation through open source, announced its intention to form the High Performance Software Foundation through a series of technical projects. It aims to build, promote, and advance portable software stacks for high-performance computing, HPC, by increasing adoption, lowering barriers to contribution, and supporting developers' efforts. I love this. Absolutely love this. It should have been Rust. It should have been Rust, but you know, we can still change it. I'm gonna email them and annoy them. So, yep, absolutely love this. I'm very excited about it. Yeah. CubeScape 3.0 has been released. Now, there is another interesting blog post that I don't have here that I did read, but it was talking about the lessons learned from CubeScape to 3.0. And it talked about their eBPF. I will post that in the Discord, as it was really informative in just their journey with eBPF up to CubeScape 3.0. But CubeScape 3.0 has been released. It's a pretty cool tool, and it adds quite a few cool features that I know a lot of enterprises want around compliance and container scan results and things like that inside of your Kubernetes cluster. So I think that this is pretty cool. It brings a bunch of stuff per workload, per namespace, per cluster, Prometheus metrics, alerting, and a bunch of stuff. It's pretty awesome. So if you're running Kubernetes, if you're running CubeScape, you definitely should check out 3.0. Yeah. Yes, Raj, I think that this is sorely needed, and I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited. This is one of the first foundations that I actually kind of would like to be a part of. I'm not sure I'm smart enough, but if I was, I think I would like to be a part of this one. I think it has a lot of possibilities to do a lot of really good for everybody that's not Google, Facebook, and Apple. Cosmotron. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. It's K0S Motron. And you guys know that I'm actually a big fan of K0S. It's a simple... Now, there's other Kubernetes operating systems, if you will, and there's ones that are better attuned to security. But if you're looking for something that's at least simple and easy to get up, K0S has been that solution. Now, with K0S Motron, you get even better. So this is basically managing K0S clusters as a service. Instead of K0S is a single Kubernetes cluster. Is it not K0S Motron? Maybe. I'm not above being wrong on how to pronounce something. When you smash a bunch of letters together like this, you are asking for me to mispronounce it. You are asking me to mispronounce. You are probably correct, Russell. Do not come to the Null News to see how to pronounce things. I guarantee you'll be wrong. Their logo is a monkey named Cosmo. So they're going Cosmotron. Okay, I got it. Cosmotron. I got it. Okay, you're probably right. Cosmotron. I don't feel like this is my fault. I don't feel like it's my fault, but maybe it's my fault. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's my fault. When I see this, I don't think Cosmotron. I know now. I like Cosmotron. It's easier to say than Cosmostron or K0S Motrin. That sounds like a drug to help you sleep. If you're having trouble sleeping at night, take some K0S Motrin. It will effectively knock you out and make you wish that you were asleep than working on Kubernetes. All right, anyways, let's move on to the actual news part of it. It has been released. I'm pretty excited about it because part of my Eddington plans revolve around Kubernetes cluster because it's built into Kubernetes. The Eddington part of it is for the Null cloud, and this looks like something I'm actually going to leverage in the near future. So I'm really excited about that. I'm very happy about it. I'm gonna call it Cosmotron because that's awesome. Cosmotron, I like it. We're calling it Cosmotron, and now I think of it as like a robotic monkey that turns into a car. That's literally maybe a spaceship since it's Cosmo. Like maybe it's a robotic spaceship that turns into a transform. That's all I can think of at this point. All I can think of. All right, but I'm excited about it. I don't know if you guys are, but I thought I'd let you guys know that it was released. So go give it a star. Go give it a. I already did. I'm one of the 226. I was actually one of the first 100. Not that I'm creeping on them, but I was one of the first 100. Made me happy. I feel like I should get a reward for being the first 100 on a project that goes over 100, but I don't think you get a prize for that. All right. Apple has doubled down that 8 gigs is enough memory. Let me tell you, it's not. If you're a software developer and you want to develop on a Mac, it is not. It is not. And I'm going to tell you a couple reasons. One of my worst downvoted videos was when I talked about my problems with the M1 Max. And one of the problems is the unified memory. Now, the unified memory is fast. It is blazing fast. It is very fast. It's very good. One of the problems with it is that your GPU and your CPU share memory. Now, in a real system, it actually uses less than a system that has CPU memory and a GPU memory because there's duplicated data in those. 100%. 100%. But if you add all those together on my machine, I have well over 100 gigs of memory because I don't have over 100 gigs. I have over like 80 or 90 gigs because I have 64 gigs of memory in my CPU for my CPU, and then I have like 20 gigs or 10 gigs for my GPU. So they're separated. And so the problem is that by and large, you use more memory. I use more memory on all my my wife's M2 MacBook Pro. I didn't do a review on it because I don't want the downvotes, but using the same applications, because that stuff, the stuff that would be in your GPU is in memory, you use way more memory. 8 gigs is not enough. 8 gigs is not enough. Sorry, I saw that and I had to rant on it a little bit because they're like doubling down. The problem is the OS might not need more than 8 gigs, and that's fine. The OS does run really efficiently and it's really good, but that's not all that matters. The applications, and then you get the haters that say, hey, look, well, the applications aren't Apple's fault. And you're right, the applications aren't Apple's fault. My wife uses Adobe products, and they're terrible, horrible products that consume way too much memory. The problem is she has to run them. She's going to run them anyways. So also Docker uses like 10 gigs of memory. Not even joking. Docker uses 10 gigs. If you use Docker Desktop on a Mac, 10 gigs, done. Actually, they fixed it. It's down to like 6 gigs now, but still 6 gigs just to run Docker. My goodness. Also, the price of a memory upgrade in an Apple product is is so high. I almost agree that it should be illegal. I'm not a big fan of making things illegal, but I would be on board with Apple's markup on that. It's pretty rough. Anyways, I saw that and just I have a lot of data on it. I did a lot of experiments on it. 8 gigs, if you're a software developer, 16 isn't enough. And the other problem that you run into it is this is a good thing too. Their disk is super fast. Their disk is super fast. And what you won't realize is that you're running on swap. And what happens is if you have a terabyte hard drive and you fill 800 gigs of it up, and then 50 gigs or 10 gigs are used for swap, that swap will destroy that drive faster than you can eat a bag of Cheetos. Like it will destroy the drive so quickly, it's not even funny. But you don't even know you're using swap because the hard drive is so fast. You can actually not know you're using swap. And so that's another thing that's like, it's a good thing because like, man, the swap is blazingly fast, but it is a bad thing at the same time. So anyways, sorry for the rant. I just saw Apple coming out and defending that the M2 Pro starts with 8 gigs and it set me off a little bit. It set me off a little bit. You need to be careful with swap on your NVMe drives. Just the thing is, NVMe drives and the Mac ones are really fast, and it's nice because swap actually performs not horribly on those devices. You just have to be really careful because people have killed their drives in less than like a month leveraging swap on it and not realizing it. So anyways, moving on. Sorry about that. I know, not a popular opinion, but 8 gigs is fine if you browse Netflix and Facebook. It's fine. But that's not a pro machine. It's not fine. I can tell you from an M2, it's not okay. That has 64 gigs of memory on my wife's machine. And she can get it up to like 40. And I get it up to 60 if I edit a video, so. Raj, if you ever want to get downvoted on a YouTube video, I think people literally found my video. Like, I never had so many people watch a video, and I've never had so many people downvote it. And I was like, I legitimately came up with problems. It's amazing. All right, so let's talk about cloud. We have a few things on cloud, just a few things. Azure's new API management tiers have been released. So basically, Azure, and I announced this when it came out, Azure released some new API management things that were out there, but they have now started releasing pricing on those tiers. So if you're leveraging that, you're more than welcome to check those out. So they've released more information on those different tiers. I think they have 3 tiers now, as well as some pricing information on those. So you should check those out. I do believe the base tier is the same price. So there's not it's not like one of Google's we hit a price increase in here. For the most part, the base minimum has the same features and same price. It's just the higher level tiers that are going to get you. This gets me excited. I know that we haven't talked about table formats in our data architecture yet, and it will be sometime next year. But Microsoft and Google are supposedly joining forces on OneTable, an open source solution for data lake challenges. So OneTable is basically a way to I almost said format tables, but it's a way that you store data in data lakes. So this is columnar databases. So anyways, Microsoft seems to be joining Google and OneHouse in supporting the OneTable project. And I think that that's actually a pretty big deal in the data warehouse. I know Apache Iceberg is another big one that I believe I believe AWS is pretty big on the Iceberg. Yeah. Anyways, I'm excited about this. I'm excited to see where it goes. And yeah. All right. So Microsoft has released 2 of its own hardware. It kind of took Apple's approach to silicon and decided that it's going to do it. Now, nothing Microsoft released is available to the public for like my own personal computer and whatnot, but they are releasing their 2 own silicone chips. So Microsoft released their Cobalt CPU. This is going to be a CPU that's based on ARM, and they released their Azure Mira, which is their AI accelerated chip for AI. They don't state what this is based off of. Maybe it's not based off of anything like ARM or anything like that. There's a couple open source GPU type of stuff. Not sure yet on this Azure, the Mira. I'm going to be interested into seeing if people outside of Azure's cloud can access these chips, or if these are just for Azure. My assumption right now, because they haven't said anything, is that they are just for Azure. We're never going to see them. But this is actually an interesting shift in clouds. I'm very interested in seeing if some of the differentiators between clouds start to become the processors you can get in the clouds. If these big clouds, AWS already does this. Their Graviton processors are their own silicone. Microsoft has now joined the game. And when will GCP start making their own CPUs to do it? So part of me questions, is this going to be the next arms race in the clouds? Is what type of efficiencies, price per computing unit can you get out of the clouds? Who has the better offering? I think this could actually be really huge in the AI factor, because AI can be expensive. And if you could get a chip that really drastically reduces the AI cost, I think that could be a big deal for your cloud, a huge deal. Azure have taken away Git repos support from the APIM. The APIM. What is the APIM? Could you familiarize me with that? I missed that in the news. Oh, their API management. Sorry. Yeah. They took away Git repo support? Oh, from the baseline one? Or just altogether? Oh, that's a big deal. If people were relying on that, I wonder why. They make it sound like they're not going to at all. Okay, so maybe it's because they have a different way of doing it. So like the Azure DDoS protection, you still get DDoS protection, right? This just gets done through their, what is it called there? Oh yeah, done through front door. So I'm wondering if this is supposed to be done through something else. Their original DDoS protection wasn't free either, though, right? Their firewall stuff wasn't free, right? Did they have some sort of basic DDoS protection? It might just be infrastructure as code. I mean, I think this might be acceptable. It's something important to understand, though, especially if you were heavily leveraging it. It's a big change if you have to go through it. I'm also not up on all the pricing of Azure stuff, so I'm sorry about that. I should have maybe looked into it a little bit more. But it's a good call out that you made about the API managed service configuration using Git. I'm gonna try to make a note about making an announcement on that next time, because that's one of the things, like if you were leveraging that when you go to change and upgrade, that could be a huge kick to the gut if you didn't realize that that was work that was going to have to be done. All right. All right. Well, that is it for me for today. Thanks everybody for joining. I know it was a lot. It was 2 weeks worth of news. We had all the ChatGPT commotion I wanted to cover. Yeah, it was a long one. Sorry about that. I really did. I actually eliminated a lot of the standard stuff that I would have talked about. But yeah. Anyhow, thank you so much for joining. Thanks for all your guys' support. And I will see you guys next time. OpenAI will have 17 new board members by next Sunday. I almost think that the only way you get Bachman and Altman back is by getting rid of the rest of the board. I don't know that you do that, though. Have a fantastic week, everyone.